What a weird week it's been. What is going on in America? Hey everyone, welcome to Nuance Live. Happy Friday. Is it happy though? Elon and Trump are fighting. I would say it's gone from a disagreement to a full scale beef. And today we're going to break down what's been happening, why it's been happening, and prognosticate about where things could go from here. Now, I'll say this before I even get into the analysis. I'm just disappointed and sad in what's going on between Elon and Trump with all of the things that need to be solved in America right now and all of the hostility that exists between Republicans and Democrats and left and right. This just feels like a completely unnecessary, massive distraction. And although it is entertaining, right? Like, just be honest, it's always entertaining when two of the most powerful people in the world are going to the mat over what seems like a interpersonal conflict. Of course, the whole world is going to watch, and I'm not going to act like I'm above it. It certainly has made X entertaining in the last 48 hours. And it's also sad because at the end of the day, politics is not supposed to be a source of entertainment. Politics is supposed to be a source of stability and support in our actual lives that we're supposed to be living. So we're going to talk about it, but this kind of feels like covering celebrity gossip for E! News, which is not what I think my highest service can be. But I realize a lot of this is confusing. So at minimum, I have one goal today, which is to just let you know what's going on, because there's already a lot of distortion and misinformation about what's been said and who said what first. So first, let's just clarify all of this. So it's a sad day for America, and I'm disappointed to see Trump personally attacking Elon and Elon personally attacking Trump back. But here's what's going on and why it matters. So before this being about Elon versus Trump, it actually was not about Elon versus Trump. It was about Elon's criticism of Trump's bill, which is called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And the One Big Beautiful Bill, or we're going to call it BBB, just to keep things short, is a piece of hallmark legislation that is being heavily supported by Trump. And it's an over 1,100 page bill that contains a lot of different campaign promises that made, including more funding for border security and cracking down on immigration. It actually includes cuts to entitlement programs like Medicaid to help curb overall spending, no tax on tips, extension of Trump's tax cuts from 2017, and additional tax cuts that are meant to help the middle class. So depending on where you fall, you're going to have things that you like more about the bill, and then you might have things that you dislike about the bill. Without getting into some of the specifics about the bill, let's just zoom out and talk about what the flashpoints and major point of disagreement which has been. And that's been the deficit. So as many of you know, we have a $2 trillion deficit, and we have nearly $37 trillion in debt in this country. Now, why does this actually matter? Because sometimes the numbers just get so big that it kind of doesn't really register emotionally. Well, America is the biggest source of debt in the world, which means that other countries and investors in other countries buy American debt through bonds, for example. And that means that you can kind of think as other countries as being our creditors, and we have like a credit score with the rest of the world. There comes a point where our credit score drops so low that other people don't want to buy our debt anymore. And when people don't want to buy our debt anymore, it's a really bad situation because we don't have funding to pay for the things that are required to run the country. This debt has been spiking throughout the 2000s. I think the first time that it hit $1 trillion was maybe under Obama, and it's just been continuing under every president, whether they're Republican or Democrat, including under Trump. Over the last election cycle, there became more public awareness and attention placed on this fact. And Elon, who is someone who's recently become very vocal about politics, has placed specific attention on our rising deficit and debt. And his concern is that essentially America's going to go bankrupt, right? Just like in your personal life, if you have too much outstanding debt, for the meantime, you might be able to keep up with interest payments. But if you don't pay the debt down over time, eventually you are going to start to default on payments, and banks are going to send collections agents for you, and you might have to file for bankruptcy, and that affects your credit score, and it can cause a ripple effect in your life. So Elon is concerned with that happening, and that's clearly one of his first priorities. Elon also left his official government role last week. So, as everyone at this point knows, he was the head of the Department of Government Efficiency. And that was a special role that Elon had under something that's called special government employee status. And that special government employee status only lasts for 130 days out of 365 days in a year. So Elon's role in the government officially had to end once he hit 130 days. That's what we know factually. There's been speculation, especially from some outlets like the New York Times, that there was some distance between Trump and Elon that had grown, and a difference in opinions and some disagreements. We don't know for a fact what was happening up until this point, but what we do know for a fact is that his 130-day status had expired. And Elon indicated in interviews that he felt like he had over allocated his time to politics and wanted to allocate more of his time toward, well, what we know Elon for, which is trying to send humanity to Mars and putting chips in people's brains that allow them to get the ability to see and to walk and all the myriad things that Elon is up to. Since Elon left government, he's become increasingly vocal in opposition to the big, beautiful bill. And he said in interviews that a bill can either be big or beautiful. And it's hard for a big bill to be beautiful if we're spending a lot of money in that big bill and we're not actually reducing the deficit. There's also been a difference in opinion, even within the political right, on whether the bill actually reduces the deficit. I want to clarify that piece before we get into the whole Elon-Trump piece, because this is important for every American citizen to know, because I see a lot of confusion on, does it decrease the deficit or not? Here's the facts. Stephen Miller, who is Trump's deputy chief of staff, has been very active on X for the last week, saying that not only does this have a lot of important things that were in Trump's campaign promises that America needs, he also is saying that it reduces the deficit. He's calling the Congressional Budget Office, which is ostensibly nonpartisan, a lefty organization that is using assumptions that lead people to believe that the deficit is going to decrease, or rather is going to increase. So the CBO is saying that the deficit is actually going to increase. So why is there such a difference in opinion between Stephen Miller and the CBO? Shouldn't this just be a matter of math? Well, it is a matter of math, but it's also a matter of assumptions. The CBO is operating off a different baseline assumptions about what tax revenue will be. Now, you'll recall that I mentioned that part of the bill extends Trump's 2017 tax cuts. However, the tax cuts were up for being expired this year. The big, beautiful bill extends those tax cuts in addition to layering more tax cuts on top. However, in the CBO projection, they use the baseline case for tax revenue as Trump's tax cuts do not get extended. And as a result, in their case, we would actually be making more tax revenue. And relative to that, if we pass the BBB, our deficit expands relative to what they considered the base case. Stephen Miller points out, well, the base case assumes that the tax cuts don't get extended. But if the big, beautiful bill does extend the tax cuts, then it's not, in his mind, not fair to say that that's the base case, because in the base case, we actually do get an extension of the tax cuts. Are you guys with me so far? Because this is basically just about what mathematical models the two sides are using. The other thing, though, that I think Stephen has glossed over or not mentioned, or at least in the places that I've seen him speak, is that the CBO and Stephen Miller probably have different projections, not just on the tax side, but on the growth side. Because the contention of Stephen Miller and the Trump camp is that doing these tax cuts and also doing things like unleashing cheap energy and deregulating certain key industries is going to bump up GDP growth. And the CBO uses really conservative GDP growth estimates. So somewhere around like 1.8 to 2%, which is modest, very modest. So in CBO's case, they're saying that we are going to have very conservative GDP growth. Trump's camp is saying we're going to have amazing GDP growth. What level of GDP growth is needed in order to shrink the deficit? Well, it kind of depends, because it depends on what industries grow and how much we tax those industries. For example, in the solar industry, they got a lot of tax credits. So if the solar industry grows, we don't make as much tax revenue per dollar that is made in solar. But in more traditional industries, we would make more. The estimates around 3.5% plus is the kind of GDP growth that you need in order to reliably shrink the deficit with the big, beautiful bill. For comparison, when Trump originally passed the tax cuts in 2017, one could argue that the economy was stimulated. It's unclear how much of it was due to his tax cuts, but there was good GDP growth, around 2.5 and 2.9% in 2018, or sorry, in 20, it was 2.9% in 2018 and around 2.5% in 2018, or 2019 rather. So there was solid GDP growth, but it wasn't 3.5% or anywhere near 4%. And in the case that we reach 4% GDP growth, that's really positive, and there's a really good chance that we get to shrink the deficit. So all these technicalities aside, why does this matter? It matters because no one can guarantee that the deficit is going to go down. It's conditional on GDP growth. So Stephen Miller might be right, but we have to wait and see. CBO also might be right, but we have to wait and see. No one controls GDP. There are things that we can do to stimulate GDP growth. And if you subscribe to the more school of trickle-down economics and we need to cut taxes in order to stimulate growth, I could see why you would think that we're going to reach 3.5% to 4% GDP growth, but it's not guaranteed. The thing that is guaranteed, however, is how much we spend, because we have 100% control over spending, even though we don't have 100% control over growth. Now, the concern that many Americans, including Elon, has is that, hey, we have tried strategies like this before, and we have ended up with a continuing to balloon deficit. This can't go on in perpetuity. We need to slash our spending. That's Elon's contention. And he expressed as much on X a few days ago when he had this very direct tweets expressing his thoughts. And he said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it." Tell us how you really feel, Elon. So I want everyone to know that even though Elon is being very direct and raw in his feedback, he didn't call out Trump specifically. He called out the people who voted for the bill, but by implication, he's challenging a bill that Trump is supporting, because again, this is Trump's landmark legislation. In fact, if you go to whitehouse.gov, there's a whole page for the big, beautiful bill showing you where it is in the process, and it has Trump's, a very glamorous shot of Trump, and it shows all the things that are in the big, beautiful bill that Trump said he would deliver. So I could see how Trump would take issue with Elon, who is his friend and close ally, opposing his hallmark legislation. I want to also talk about some of the circumstances around the bill, because this has been less of the focus of Elon. I think Elon's really talking about the deficit, but there are also some just like traditional issues with the congressional bill making process here. Here's a quote from Marjorie Taylor Greene, a known Republican congresswoman, where she says, "Full transparency, I did not know about this section on pages 278 to 279 of the One Big Beautiful Bill that strips states of the right to make laws or regulate AI for 10 years. Okay. So we have politicians making bills that are so long that no one can read them, then giving everyone like 48 hours to read the bill. So the bill was introduced on May 20th and voted on May 22nd. It's a 1,116 page bill that our politicians don't even read. It's like, what? We're passing laws for the country and we're spending money from taxpayers without even reading the bill. And this is not even about MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I actually respect the fact that she was transparent about the fact that she didn't know this thing was in the bill, which I assume means that she didn't read the whole bill. Or maybe she read the whole bill, but she missed it over. What kind of system is this, guys? Like, it's their job to know what's in the bill. And they're passing bills, and then it's just like, oh, whoops, I didn't know what was in there. Sorry, we just took away your rights to regulate AI on a state level. Now there's an AI nuclear power plant in Nebraska in your farmland, and we didn't know that we can't do anything about it. What? And this is a deeper concern about the entire legislative process in America. It's so broken. But I guess that's business as usual. And that requires deeper reform. Like maybe we need a third party or something, or term limits on Congress people. Let me know what you think, because this, to me, that just seems ridiculous. It should just be table stakes that the bill is short enough to be reviewed in a short time, or it's long and they get a long time to review the bill before it gets introduced. And look, I know there's a lot of work that goes into the bill, and it's a series of deals that are made and agreements that are made and compromises that are made, and it's not like no one has any idea what's in the bill before it reaches the floor. But still, when you have an 1,100 page albatross out there, it makes sense to give people enough time to actually figure out what's in there. And I think Elon makes a good point that, yeah, there's a ton of pork. There's just a bunch of stuff that is actually about various regional interests making deals to get whatever pet project that they want in the bill so that they can get reelected, rather than having very targeted, transparent, clear guidelines for the laws and the purse strings for America. So personally, it really just irks me that people are passing bills that they haven't actually read. So amidst all that, Elon's calling it out. He's constantly retweeting and saying how dumb this whole process is, and he actually retweeted one of my comments just talking about how the politicians are passing bills that they haven't even read. And this has gone on for about a week with Elon's, or actually several days, not quite a week, with Elon's vehement disagreement with the bill. Until yesterday morning, Trump spoke on Elon. And I want you to watch this and listen to it.
We've done a great job. Elon knew that. Elon endorsed me very strongly. He actually went up in campaign for me. I think I would have won. Susie would say I would have won Pennsylvania easily anyway, even if the governor ran, the real governor, not the governor from Minnesota, he's a sick puppy, that guy. That poor guy, I feel sorry for him. But they made a bad choice with him. But if you pick Shapiro or anybody else, I spoke to him recently about his house being set on fire, which was terrible. But if they picked him, I would have won Pennsylvania. I won it by a lot. But I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem, and he only developed the problem when he found out that we're going to have to cut the EV mandate, because that's billions and billions of dollars, and it really is unfair. We want to have cars of all types. Electric, we want to have electric, but we want to have a gasoline, combustion. We want to have different. We want to have hybrids. We want to have we want to be able to sell everything. And when that was cut, and Congress wanted to cut it, he became a little bit different, and I can understand that. But he knew every aspect of this bill. He knew it better than almost anybody, and he never had a problem until right after he left. And if you saw the statements he made about me, which I'm sure you can get very easily, it's very fresh on tape, he said the most beautiful things about me. And he hasn't said bad about me personally, but I'm sure that'll be next. But I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot.
Mr. President, did he, I just want to clarify, did he raise any of these concerns with you privately before he raised them publicly? And this is the guy you put in charge of cutting spending. Should people not take him seriously about spending now? Are you saying this is all sour grapes?
No, he worked hard and he did a good job. And I'll be honest, I think he misses the place. I think he got out there and all of a sudden he wasn't in this beautiful Oval Office, and he's got nice offices too. But there's something about this one. I was telling the Chancellor, this is where it is. People come in here, even from Germany. They come in and they walk into the Oval Office, and it's just a special place. It's, you know, World War I, it started and it ended here, and World War II, and so many other things. Everything big comes right from this beautiful space. It's now much more beautiful than it was 6 months ago. A lot of good things are happening in this room, and I'll tell you, he's not the first. People leave my administration and they love us, and then at some point they miss it so badly, and some of them embrace it and some of them actually become hostile. I don't know what it is. It's sort of Trump derangement syndrome, I guess they call it, but we have it with others too. They leave and they wake up in the morning and the glamour's gone, the whole world is different, and they become hostile. I don't know what it is. Someday you'll write a book about it and you'll let us know. Yeah.
Mr. President, speaking of ending wars.
Okay. So now we get into Kaizen's personal opinions on what's going on, just from like a conduct and leadership point of view. And I want to say that sitting here looking at what happened yesterday, I'm disappointed in both Elon and Trump. I don't think either of them acted like leaders. I think this was needlessly personal. It really just could have been about the legislation. And now it's become about retaliation. And I think that's sad. I think it's a horrible look for America. And I think it's actually vindicating people who were opposed to a Trump presidency and Elon being involved. So I think this is just a straight L for America, period. It's entertaining. Yep. It's not constructive. I also want to clarify point in fact, because people are saying, well, Elon was insulting Trump first. You're welcome to believe that Elon being as vehemently and vocally in opposition to the bill is disrespectful. Like, you're welcome to believe that. You're welcome to believe that Elon was being counterproductive in his opposition to the bill. You're welcome to believe that. It is just not true that Elon brought Trump into it personally before Trump brought Elon into it personally. That's just not true. And I'm going to give you the timeline here. So on June 3rd, that's when Elon said this comments about the bill being a pork-filled abomination. So that happened on June 3rd. And then Elon had tons of tweets, but none of them named Trump by name. June 5th at 12:08 p.m. Eastern, Trump said those things that he said in the press conference. I want you to note some of the things that Trump said. Trump said that Elon was angry because the EV tax credit was removed. I don't know what happened behind closed doors, but historically, Elon has actually said himself that he thinks the EV credit should be removed. Trump said that, well, when Elon left office, he implied that he got Trump derangement syndrome and he misses being in the Oval Office. And it was just a lot of personal commentary. Now, was it as far as what we're going to cover next, which is how Elon responded? No, but Trump was the first one to make it about Elon rather than making it about the bill. So Elon criticized the bill. Then Trump started to criticize Elon. Trump also on True Social, and I actually wish I had a screenshot of this, called Elon crazy. He said that Elon went crazy by the time that he left. He said that by the time that Elon left, he was wearing thin. Okay, so there's what he said on the press conference, and then there's what he actually said on True Social. Trump also said that he would have won Pennsylvania without Elon. So obviously, factually, that's speculative, but yeah, that's a personal comment. And Elon responded by saying that if it hadn't been for Elon, then they would have had a narrow margin in the House, and he thinks that Trump wouldn't have won the presidency. And then Elon started to escalate after Trump escalated on him. And this is where, in my opinion, Elon went too far. Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason that they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT. Really sad. And I actually responded to that comment. I responded to Elon and I said, this is just unnecessary. You already had the more principled position. Because I did believe he had the more principled position. He was critiquing the bill. Trump started critiquing him. Elon was talking about a principled issue, which is that he was concerned that the bill did not decrease the deficit. Now, Elon might be wrong about that, just to be clear. And as I articulated earlier to you guys, whether the bill decreases the deficit is a matter of GDP growth. And no one knows what the GDP growth is going to be. Elon has a criticism that he thinks the spending should be lower. Trump believes that we need to stimulate industry, so taxes need to be lower. Okay, there's reasonable disagreements to have there. I think Trump went too far when he started bringing up Elon and saying he would have won Pennsylvania without him, and he's angry about the EV tax credit, and he has some TDS because he left the White House. It's just unnecessary. He can just say maturely, when the reporter asked him about Elon, hey, we're having a professional disagreement. I understand why Elon is saying those things. I wish he would support the bill. That's all I want to say on the topic. And to people saying, oh, well, Trump is just being honest and he was asked a question, there are plenty of times where Trump does not answer the media directly. So let's not give him a pass by saying, oh, well, he answered the question that he was asked. Trump has no issues changing the topic or only answering when he feels like it. So I just don't see any reason that he needed to answer in a personal fashion at all. And before Elon escalated, my thought on this was, look, Elon is incredibly powerful. He's the richest man in the world. He's incredibly influential. But he's not an elected leader. Trump is. Elon is a private citizen, an exceptionally visible one, and a private citizen nonetheless. Could I have personal misgivings and think that Elon could have made his points better? Yeah, I do think there are ways he could have made that were more constructive. That said, I don't hold him to the same behavioral standard as I hold Trump, because Trump is elected to be the chief public servant of America as our commander-in-chief and president. So no, I don't think that just because Elon said anything about Trump, that Trump should say something back. Frankly, even if Elon had been engaging in personal attacks before Trump started getting personal, I still would have said the leadership move here is to not respond, or respond in a way that de-escalates it. And all that said, yeah, I think Elon just went way too far when he said this, because what's the implication here? The implication is, at best, Trump is compromised because he has a conflict of interest between releasing the Epstein files and Trump's personal brand. He's not necessarily saying that Trump is a pedophile, but the worst case interpretation, which I'm sure Elon is aware of because he said he's dropping a nuke, is that he's calling Trump a pedophile on the low. Come on, guys, what are we doing? We don't need this. We don't need this. And then there's all sorts of incongruencies, because if Elon, again, I don't think Elon's really I don't think Elon actually believes that Trump is a pedophile. And if he does believe that Trump is a pedophile, I don't know why you would allow Trump near your kid and be taking pictures with your kid. Like, that would be super weird. I'm not sure if Elon even thought about it that much. I think this is me speculating. I'm mind reading. I'm talking about his emotional state. So just all caveats. But yeah, I think Elon is he feels things very deeply and very passionately. And he just, like, when he feels attacked, he attacks right back. And it's like, if you're going to bring war, I'm going to bring war. He doesn't de-escalate, he escalates. And I get that's Elon. I get that aggression, that warrior spirit has allowed him to build a lot. And here, when we're talking about people, I think it's just so counterproductive. So yeah, I'm just disappointed in these behaviors by both men. I think it's a massive distraction for the American people. I think it actually just gives more ammunition to people who were skeptical about Trump and Elon to begin with. And I really hope that they just move past this, because we have bigger problems to face as a civilization, right? There's like 2 foreign wars that have still not ended. There is this crisis on college campuses. There's massive division over Israel, Palestine. There's people literally engaging in terrorist attacks in Colorado and killing Jewish people. There's just all this stuff to deal with. Do we really need this on top, guys? No, we don't. We really don't. So where does this leave us? Well, there's been mixed reporting about Elon wanting to speak to Trump and Trump maybe not wanting to speak to Elon. And I don't know where it's going to go. I really hope they don't keep on sniping. Oftentimes, look, the way that alpha, confident, high agency men behave is there's a big fight and then it's like, cool, we got it out. Now let's just like make up and move on. Like we don't need to have this be a blood feud in perpetuity. So I hope that they just have a private conversation and work it out. I don't know why they didn't do that before. I don't know what was going on in closed doors, but it's a bad look for America. It's a bad look for them personally. And yeah, I don't think anyone should be condoning the behavior. Like, I don't think there's any need for us as the American people. And, this is my bigger concern. No, I don't know if it's bigger, but this is my concern with sometimes the way that people receive this. I see people saying stuff like, oh, it's all just orchestrated and they planned this and it's actually just a way to create pressure for I don't even understand what the claim is, for the Epstein files to get released, and they're actually hoodwinking the Democrats here. Look, let's apply Occam's razor. So Occam's razor is a mental model that you can use to just critically think through issues. Do we really think that they've coordinated this entire thing so that Elon is calling the bill an abomination, a bill that Trump clearly wants to get passed, and then they're coordinating secretly in the background? So for days, Elon is doing this, and then Trump is going to go on a press conference, and that's when he personally escalates, and that's when, right after Elon announces that the Epstein files have Trump involved. That's a really complex explanation. A much simpler explanation is these guys lost their cool and this is entropy. That's a much simpler explanation. Much simpler explanation is Trump and Elon are both known for doing this kind of stuff. And it's a continuation of a pattern of personality that we've observed. So no, I'm not willing to say this is some 4D, 5D chess move to get one over on the Democrats. Like, I think that's needlessly complex explanation. And when we do, when we keep on making excuses for our leaders behaving in this way, well, they keep on behaving that way. Aren't we all tired of this, guys? I am. You're not. This stuff matters. This is not like a reality TV show here. This is not us watching The Apprentice. This is the governance of our country. So no, I'm not willing to say, oh, it's all just some scheme and the world is just a stage and Elon and Trump planned this. And if they did plan it, it's, in my mind, it's very unclear what the benefit is. So, yep, I'm disappointed. And look, I don't think a bad moment makes a bad person. So I'm not going to make this some sweeping indictment of Elon or Trump. I have a tremendous amount of respect for them. I think they're doing a lot of good things for our country. I think directionally, they've been correct time and time again. And this is one of those things that's just so unnecessary. And I think it actually self-sabotages their ability to deliver great results for America and humanity. So them's my thoughts. Curious what your thoughts are. The corner of my eye, I can see the chat popping off, so we'll get to that in a moment. If you are someone who wants to prioritize me answering your questions, you can do that by becoming a subscriber. And actually, on Wednesday, I held a subscriber-only Zoom hangout that was really fun. It was actually a great opportunity for me to spend an hour with some of you, getting to meet you. Shout out to Hollis and Hope and Alan and Daniel and a bunch of people on the chat. I'm sorry if I'm not remembering your name in this moment, but thanks for coming to the private chat. It was really cool to connect with some of you who are subscribing. So thank you for being subscribers. Thank you for supporting me. And yeah, if you like my work, feel free to become a subscriber on, it could be any platform. It could be Substack, X, Instagram. And if you just like consuming my content for free, that's fine too. So let's get to the chat, see what y'all are thinking, see what y'all are saying. And if you feel that I am wrong on something, I would love to hear your argument for why. GM Collectibles, thank you. Says, let's go, brothers. Kaizen is one of the best places to get news these days. Thank you. And look, I don't want anyone to mistake me for a news source. I get that I am obviously spreading information, and I spread information that I feel interested in, but I don't consider it my job to be a news source and tell you breaking news. I just like to make sure that when I comment, because I consider myself a thought leader, I want to spread ideas that I think are really important. I think it's important to ground all of those in facts, and I try to be as nuanced and fair in my analysis as possible. That said, I recognize that some people, they do come to me for news, so I appreciate the compliment. So thank you, GM Collectibles. Kat said, I really hate that this was in the public. Very disappointing. I agree. It's just, we don't need this. Crazy says, bad angle. The fireplace is top reflective. Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. Yeah, I got to fix my studio setup here. It does not need to be 3.5 GDP growth to shrink the deficit. I agree. It does not need to be. And even if it is 3.5% or 4%, it's not guaranteed, because then there's, I mean, we get into like deeper economic theory, but there's like elasticity. There's what industries are growing. In certain industries that have a lot of tax subsidies, we don't actually get as much for our tax base when those industries grow, like solar. But the point here is just that whether our GDP grows enough, or sorry, whether the deficit grows depends on our GDP growth. The more that our GDP grows, the more likely it is our deficit decreases. And the fundamental concern is that we've made bets on GDP growing enough to shrink the deficit before, and it's consistently not worked out over the 21st century. But yeah, you're right. It's not deterministic like that. It's not like, oh, if we hit 3.5%, our deficit shrinks, but it becomes increasingly likely around that. But yeah, thank you for the clarification and the nuance. According to modern monetary theory, deficit is not bad so long as we utilize unutilized resources. I am not someone who feels confident enough about macroeconomics to comment on this. You may be right. So thanks for your comments, Pro X Martin. What is written in the bill? So as I mentioned, it's an 1,100-page bill. There's tons. If you're actually interested in reading some of the bill, at least from the Trump administration perspective, if you just Google White House big beautiful bill, like whitehouse.gov big beautiful bill, you can see all the things. They actually have a page where they mention 50 things that are in the bill that they're proud of. So yeah, it's border security, more ICE agents, more funding for the border wall, extending Trump's 2017 tax cuts, layering more tax cuts on top. Forgot to mention this. In point of fact, the bill does reduce government spending by $1.6 trillion over 10 years. And a lot of that comes from reductions of the SNAP program, which is food stamps, and reductions in Medicaid. So you leave it up to you to decide whether that's a good thing, but the bill does decrease spending. Some of the critics have just said it doesn't decrease spending enough. Okay, let's keep going here. Adam says, I'm tired of career politicians. Me too. And, before all of this Trump Elon beefing, I would have said that I was really happy that Elon was speaking out, because look, there's certain things like we can disagree about the bill and the deficit and what spending should be and whether it's okay to have a deficit and debt to GDP ratio and all these technicalities. But there are certain things that are just objectively ridiculous, like passing an 1,100-page bill with 48 hours to review and then voting on the bill without even knowing what's in the bill. That's ridiculous. And that's definitely a byproduct of the establishment. And I think before all of this, Elon reminded us that this isn't about left versus right, because both parties pull a lot of nonsense like this. Career politicians do this all the time. They prioritize the short term and they hurt America in the long term. This is about the establishment versus the people, not left versus right. So I agree with you, Adam. And thank you for the compliment. Philip says, surely they've got advisors that are going to lead/advise both parties toward reconnection. I hope so. And I hope they listen to them. Shannon says, hey, Kaizen, love your channel. And like yourself, have found myself to be and see the nuance on every issue. Great. I'm glad. Look, I get messages a lot of time from people who resonate with what I'm saying. And it's nice to hear when people agree with me. And it's deeply fulfilling when people are like, hey, I don't even agree with everything you say. I just appreciate how you think about things and that you're willing to examine and explore both sides. And that feels really good. And I think that's what we need, because what's happening is there's so much division because people are not even willing to see the other side. They're not even willing to try to understand the argument for the other side. And I think that's really important, because how we talk about things is just as, if not more important, honestly, in the long term, as what we actually do. Because if we have a country that's based on the assumption that everyone on the other side is evil or stupid or acting in bad faith, it's very hard for us to get along as a society. So thanks for that comment there. Okay, let's keep on going. So I'm not going to get to every comment. I try to prioritize people who are subscribers. So if you're a subscriber and I miss your comment, just go ahead and send me a DM and I can get to it later on Monday when I'm back. Okay, cool. We have a fun chat today. We have Elon Crust. I can't see your photo, but it appears to be a piece of toast, which I assume has Elon's face on it. So yes, I do like your username. You gotten my attention. Politicians don't have the backbone needed to cut spending. Yeah, I don't know too much about Thomas Massie and Rand Paul and their actual the actual track record of legislation, but I appreciate that they've been stalwart and consistently saying, hey, we need to get this under control. I believe Thomas Massie even wears like an electronic display that shows what the debt is in real time and like wears that around Congress. I just love that there are people who are saying, look, we can't do this forever. Like, I'm not saying we should have a deficit of zero. I'm not saying that we should have a debt of zero. What's the number that's too far? I don't know, but it feels like we're on runaway tracks, and the bond markets, the interest on our bonds continue to go higher and higher. I believe actually Moody's, which is I guess a financial, you can think of like an appraisal body, actually basically gave America a lower credit score. So there's a point at which it's too far. And my concern is that we're not being diligent, or we're not even identifying what the number should be, that where it's like, okay, maybe we can carry a deficit and debt and interest in perpetuity, but like, let's have a conscious conversation about that rather than constantly changing the conversation and passing the buck to the next president. Like, eventually the chicken's got to come home to roost. Continuing on here. Marcus says, at least MTG could have run the bill through Grok. That's a good point. I think the game has changed a bit. And thanks to AI, we can analyze large amounts of data and form conclusions about the data. So look, I'm open to the idea that politicians don't need to read through every piece of congressional legislation and they can use AI to fill in the gaps. But I'm not confident that all of our Congress people are AI literate. I'm not even sure that all of them are tech literate. And I'm not sure that they're all very good at prompting and they can catch different issues in bills. So look, I would just like the bills to be shorter. To remind you guys remember when the, what was it? Was it a reconciliation bill? There was a bill that I think it was the Senate was trying to pass at the end of last year, and Elon got on the bullhorn and was like, yeah, this bill is way too long and it spends too much money. And eventually they actually did go back and make the bill shorter and easier to understand. So look, influence does work. And if enough people are aware of nonsense, we've shown that politicians are responsive to public pressure. So yes, I think AI solves some of this, but like, how about we just get simpler, shorter, easy to understand bills? I think there just needs to be an overhaul of the entire legislative process when it comes to drafting and passing bills. But yes, I think Grok would be helpful, or ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you want to use to analyze this stuff. And they've certainly made my life amazingly. I mean, they've honestly just changed my life. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing without AI, because I use AI to scrub through the news. I mean, if you like the fact that I'm nuanced and I'm giving you guys as objective info as I can, it's because of AI. AI is so amazing. I mean, if it hasn't changed your life yet, just because you haven't been using it enough. Third party would be great. I agree. Even if it doesn't even have to be a big third party. I think just merely having a third option so that when the right and the left are acting foolish, we have some sort of recourse. I think that would already be transformative to society. Just Ani, I love this question. Just Ani asked, if you had one thing to try to say to each of them, what would you say? I would actually ask the both of them the same question, which is this effective? Because so many people are caught up in who said what first. And well, Elon was opposing the bill, then Trump was just responding, and Elon was being childish, or Trump is being personal. It's like blah 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 blah. This is like high school analysis. Like we don't. It's not about that. It's about, hey, what does leadership actually require? And leadership requires mastering your emotions and doing things that are focused on the goal rather than the person. So I would just ask both of them. It's like, hey, do you think what you're doing is effective? That's all. I think these guys are both intelligent men who are capable of self-analysis, and they know what the most effective ways to get things done. And I would be surprised if either of them looked at what they did and be like, yeah, this is the most effective thing for America, for the long term, for passing legislation that is aligned with my worldview. Like I don't think this is effective. So I'll just ask them, hey, do you think this is effective? And this brings me to a bigger point about emotional intelligence. I think, look, there's no shortage of smart people in the world. I don't think we have an intelligence issue in the world. I think we do have an issue with clear thinking and emotional intelligence. I think the two are connected with one another, because often people are so concerned with, well, the person's just being honest and they're being truthful. It's like, yeah, well, you can be truthful, but if you're being a jerk, you're truthfully going to make people hostile toward you. And it's going to be harder to get things done, because guess what? We need other people to get anything great done. So emotional intelligence is deeply important, not because people's feelings are inherently just important, although I do think they are, but because doing important things requires operating through people. And if we're alienating and polarizing people, it becomes harder to get things done. So that's what I'd say to them. Great question. Love that. That was my favorite question of the chat. So great question, Just Ani. All right, a few more questions before we're done here. Oh, another thing. So look, guys, I see big influencers like just getting tribal about this. Like this has to be about Elon versus Trump. No, this doesn't have to be about Elon versus Trump, guys. And I fear we've created this society where, again, we're treating politics like it's sports teams or it's reality TV, and it's like about just like feeling like your team won. But no, these guys are, well, not these guys. Trump is a public servant. His job is to serve the public. It's not for us to create cult of personality or for us to win over some other side in some sort of sporting competition. No, that's not what this is about. So we need to be able to call out bad behavior on both sides, as well as celebrate good behavior on both sides. So I really just like that people are making this about what personality do they like more and who do we feel more loyal to. No. This is not about, we shouldn't be loyal to these people. They should be loyal to us. They should be loyal to the people. That's what politicians should be. They should be loyal to the people. We should not be loyal to them. It's ridiculous. Robert says it is constructive. It's raw and honest. Yeah, and it can be raw, honest, and emotionally intelligent. Rawness and honesty should not be the only criteria for leadership. Okay, leaders have discernment. Leaders have restraint. Leaders have emotional mastery. Leaders read the room. Leaders have grace. Leaders lead. So for me, I get that there's been a deficit of rawness and honesty, and that's why Trump has resonated with so many people. That's why he got elected. I like that Trump is honest. That's great. And that honesty doesn't need to be sacrificed for having restraint and discernment. And I've seen Trump exercise discernment. You know, you guys remember when there was this Zelensky at the Oval Office blow up with JD Vance and Trump? You know, people focused on the blow up, but I'll remind people that blow up happened at the end of like an hour-long press conference where Zelensky was constantly being emotional, constantly demonizing Putin. And whether you think Putin's a bad guy or not, if you're trying to make peace with someone, it probably makes sense to not demonize them in public. And the whole time, Trump was trying to de-escalate and diffuse. And he was like, I'm not going to take sides here. I just want the killing to stop. I want the dying to stop. So I know that Trump has discernment. I know that Trump doesn't just say what's on his mind all the time. So no, I'm not willing to say, oh, well, he's just raw and honest. Sorry, that's just not good enough in a leader. You can be raw and honest and honestly ineffective and counterproductive. And that's what I think Trump was being here. And I think we need to hold our leaders to a higher standard. Okay, let's see. Emotions ran high, says Aurora Sky. Yep, they did. And I get that. I'm not saying that Trump or Elon shouldn't feel emotional. I'm just saying, like, the place to be emotional is not in front of the entire world. Like, this is what therapists and your friends and venting sessions are for, not the public square all the time. What are Elon's gripes with the bill? So to clarify, I mentioned this earlier, but my understanding is he's just concerned that the bill just doesn't cut spending enough. That's the biggest thing. And there's a lot of pork in there, which is definitely true. And by pork, if you think of the term pork and barrel spending, pork is just basically excess fat, like a bunch of things that are not really connected to the core purpose of the bill. It's a bunch of compromises and sweetheart deals and things that people decided in private meetings, like, hey, if you give my district money for, I don't know, health services, then I'll support the bill, even though I disagree with these things. And granted, there's always in democracy, there has to be a give and take. I just think that there's so much giving and taking that what we get given is a bill that no one's actually read, and they're not actually concerned with the most important things of the bill. They're more concerned with whether the bill helps them get reelected. So I think that's his fundamental concern with the bill. And I'm not sure that I agree. Well, I'm honestly not decided on how I feel about Trump's theory of economics here, which is let's cut taxes and deregulate and make energy cheaper and focus on growth versus let's just cut spending. I think there's actually a reasonable disagreement there. So I honestly don't know where I lie. And again, I say this like I'm not confident enough in my mastery of economics. I don't think anyone should be like that confident in their mastery of economics. Macroeconomists get this stuff wrong all the time. So I'm saying that not because I think like I'm stupid about economics or something. Like I think I can give some incisive takes, but this is one of the most complicated things to get right. And I think when people are like super confident, like this is guaranteed to increase the deficit or this is guaranteed to shrink the deficit, I think there's a lot of hubris in there. I think we need to be all humble and be like, we don't know. And actually the truth is it depends. So the question is not whether it decreases the deficit or increases the deficit. The question is under what conditions does this bill increase or shrink the deficit, and how do we create the conditions that are favorable to the outcome that we want? That's how we should be talking about these things because they're dynamic. Sometimes it's binary. Close the border. We shouldn't have illegal immigration in mass. Like some things are just, to me, very cut and dry, but this is not one of them. All right, lots of comments. It's funny. I'm like talking about this and everyone's talking about it. Last stream, I talked like Israel, Palestine, and I got like 1/20th of the comments. So funny. I guess people are just, I guess Israel, Palestine wasn't as pressing of it wasn't as top of mind when I talked about it on Wednesday. So it's cool to see a lot of people here. Grateful for you guys being here. Oh, and on another note, I would like us to get the Epstein files. What's going on there? Like, why don't we have the Epstein files? It's a reasonable question. I wish they weren't brought in like this in this context, but yeah, we were promised Epstein files and we got a bunch of nothing. And Kash Patel and Pam Bondi haven't, maybe you guys know, I've missed any real substantive update on what's going on there. Although I know Kash Patel just did an interview with Joe Rogan, so maybe he addressed it there. All right, last few. Christian Olson says, thank you, Kaizen, for explaining this. You're welcome, Christian. Aurora says, Elon has a great heart and a great patriot. I believe so. It's purely speculative, but I believe so. I think his heart is in the right place. I think his emotions just got the better of him. And he has mentioned comments on X saying, like, yeah, he does want to, like, make up. I think Bill Ackerman posted, hey, let's just like move on. And Naval Ravikant said, hey, look, Elon's standing on principle. Trump is standing on practicality. Let's like get an agreement and move on. And Elon has said, yeah, we should do that. So I think there's an openness to mending the bridge, and hopefully this can be something that is just water under the bridge rather than the whole river for the next 4 years. Let's check some egos here. Aurora says, yes, thank you. Great comment. Aurora says, exactly, show us the math and stop changing the conversation. Yeah, just show us the math. If Stephen Miller is going to say that the bill decreases the deficit, when, by the way, that's not known. It's under certain conditions the bill decreases the deficit. Show us the conditions. Show us why you're confident those conditions will happen. The two sides are just talking past one another, and I don't know why. I don't know why. Whenever there's a disagreement, it's like people just like they don't engage with the steel man version of the opposite argument. They always like do this misdirection and talking about straw men and make overconfident statements. Like it just doesn't need to be like this. So I agree, Aurora. Just show us the math. Lizzie says, I'm with Elon. Doing the right thing is more important than loyalty. I agree with you that doing the right thing is always more important than being loyal to a politician that none of us actually know. Like, we're not their family members or their friends. We're their employer. They're our employees. Do the right thing. You're here for 4 years. Do a good job. Jazz Harlow says, we could train specific AI models that are uniquely able to identify hidden things in bills like this. I would love that. I think that could be very productive. And I think actually the AI models we already have are quite good at analyzing huge bills, but you got to start prompting well. So the power of the prompter determines the quality of the answer. All right, last few comments. Marcus779 says, excellent live. Appreciate your conversation. Thank you, Marcus. Okay. Great. Gilbiozo, is that how you say your name? Gilbiozo says, well done. It takes a brave man to delve into the intricacies of the BBB. Explaining the meaning of life might be easier, right? It shouldn't be that hard, but it is. You know, it's like, we got a big, beautiful bill. Give us a big, beautiful explanation, please. You know why part of the reason there's so much division around this stuff is because there's so much difference in the information that people are even reacting to. It's like, look, if you're not on X and seeing comments from Stephen Miller and then reading a bunch of articles from the other side, and then trying to do your independent analysis, and then asking AI what it thinks, and sorting through the misinformation versus the truth, how can you form an opinion? It's so difficult. So, yeah, I think Trump, one of the reasons he got elected both times is because he's the most transparent president ever in terms of being willing to talk to the people. So just like give a speech, like a 1-hour talk, and it's like, look, this is why I think the big, beautiful bill is best for America. This is my response to the counter arguments. This is why I think it's going to decrease the deficit, or maybe even why I don't think decreasing the deficit is as important as doing these other things for America. Cool. People can still disagree, but at least we're all on the same page about what your belief is. But the conversation is so fragmented, and when it's fragmented, the people become fragmented. So yeah, the messaging, I'll say it again and again. I think that's the most transparent communication we've ever had from an administration. Like, it's unprecedented to have members of cabinet constantly doing podcasts and on X, and we can hear what they're saying. And it just needs to be made more cohesive, so we're not all relying on a bunch of clips. Like, what happens to presidents, when they do that speech where there's like a fixed camera and they read something off a teleprompter in front of the in the Oval Office behind the desk? What happened to that? Let's do more of that. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thank you for supporting. Shout out, plug. If you're not on my mailing list right now, you need to get on that thing, because on my mailing list, not only do I give deeper thoughts on these topics in written thoughts, and I give thoughts on how to critically think through some of this stuff to help you with making sense of this very confusing world. I also give a weekly digest of content, because I have this big following on these different social platforms, but the problem is the platforms determine whether you get to see what I'm saying, because algorithm determines what you see. I don't get to determine what you see. You don't get to determine what you see. So I highly recommend go to my Substack. I'm actually going to type a link to to it in the chat. It's thatskaizen.substack.com. That's where you can find my mailing list, and it also has an archive of all my posts. Yeah, I like to post at least once a week and tell you what's going on. And actually, for the Elon-Trump beef yesterday, because I felt like it was urgent, I gave people a breakdown of a timeline between what Trump said to Elon and what Elon said to Trump. So that's the kind of goodies you get from there. And yeah, if I have any like private content, I announce it on Substack as well. So highly recommend you go there. So I'm going to type it here in the chat. Hopefully it goes to all platforms, because I'm streaming to Facebook and YouTube and X and Instagram at the same time. Darn it. It doesn't go to X. Oh, that's so annoying. I'm using a program that streams to all of them at the same time. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to go to my profile and I'm going to go find the live stream. Whoa, Inception. It's weird looking at myself. And I'm going to type a link to that's Kaizen's .substack.com. Nuanced mailing list. See, this is how you guys know it's live. I'm actually talking to you guys live. That's why I make mistakes. This is straight up. This is a grassroots operation. It's just me. I don't even have a producer or editor. Although I do need to bring on an editor soon, so I'm planning on doing that. Cool. And the other thing I wanted to plug is, if you guys like how I think and you like how I approach topics, I am also a life coach. I mentor people on being more courageous, on getting clarity, on making next steps in the areas of their life where they want to make the biggest change. I help leaders and entrepreneurs who are looking for a sense of purpose or looking to just be more effective in their leadership do exactly that. So if you're interested in that, I do have space for clients right now. I'm planning on stopping my life coaching practice at the end of this year. So this is the last chance to work with me. So if you've been feeling like, hey, I like Kaizen and I would like to have a conversation with him in a way that could change my own life and empower me, and you like guidance, well, I do that. So feel free to check out my website. It's thatskaizen.com. There's a link to it in my bio on all the platforms, and you can apply to be mentored by me. And yeah, if you like how I analyze things, I'm really good at analyzing people, and I'm really good at helping people realize the blind spots that get in the way of your happiness and your success and your thriving and prosperity. So go check out my website and consider applying for us to work together. I would love to work with you, and I'd much rather do that than a stranger who doesn't watch my stuff. So feel free. Anyway, fun stream. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll be back Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific to continue to give you nuanced analysis as well as my takes on what's going on. Until then, have a great weekend. Go outside, get in nature, breathe some air, connect with loved ones, play with the dog, pet a cat. Just go do things that are not politics, because this politics stuff can really distort our minds and get in our way of seeing what's really important, which is people. So people over politics. Love you all. Mwah. Thank you for watching. See you Monday.